either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And today we are concluding our second annual Nic Cage November with a movie that took me a while to finally find a DVD copy of it, as I am finding some of his older and older films are harder and harder to find. This one is probably where 90% of Nic Cage memes come from.
Oh, this is the memeiest of all the Cage films for sure.
Yes. Today we are doing 1988's Vampire's Kiss.
Yes. The most cagey films that I think we've reviewed so far.
Yes. And also the first time Cage was what we know as Nicolas Cage, the extremes, because before all this, he had been doing like romance comedies where he was like the buddy interest or
he wasn't
Raising Arizona where he's the dad.
Yeah, this is definitely him getting to experiment with the over-the-top and overly eccentric acting.
The German expressionism.
That we have now come to know and love from Nic Cage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what do we have to drink today, Chris?
Because we're creative, and it's a vampire movie, we're having tomato juice.
Yes.
Because live roaches were not an option.
No, or pigeon blood.
Or pigeon blood.
Cheers.
Cheers.
You know, I just thought we could have done a Red Sun for this, like the drink I had for lads' night.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually quite refreshing.
I've been told.
It was really good, though. But yeah, anywho, so a lot of my background for this movie actually is the only movie that I know of that has commentary from Cage himself.
Yeah, no. And the commentary is actually surprisingly easy to get a hold of.
Oh, yeah.
Which was kind of nice.
Yeah, it's commentary with Nicolas Cage and the director Robert Bierman.
Mm-hmm.
And it was done 11 years after the release.
Yeah, and then on top of that, Cage himself has talked a lot about his acting and this movie in general, and just kind of like what inspired him throughout the years in different interviews, written down all sorts of places.
Oh, yeah.
He clearly really enjoyed working on this film.
Oh, yeah. And for those who don't know, Vampire's Kiss is a dark comedy about a publisher who is obsessed with and harasses his secretary as thinks he's becoming a vampire.
He thinks he's becoming a vampire, and we'll get into it more, but there's some underlying potential plot currents that could have been in this movie that I think a lot of people saw when it came out, especially critics, I think, noticed. Such as like the homeless problems, mental illness problems, and then just the pursuit of like if you work hard, American dream sort of thing in America. Which I see the critics' points that those underlying plots are in this movie, but I do not think Nic Cage nor the director intended for those to be as heavily portrayed as I think the critics thought they should be.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is Bierman and Cage stated that they never fully understood what the movie was about. But I personally have working theories with it.
Sure.
Again, there's a lot to digest in this stupid little movie.
There is, which is part of the reason why it went from being an absolute flop to being a cult classic.
Yeah, and Cage himself saw it as a film about man's inability to find love, and his loneliness drives him insane.
Mm-hmm. Whereas the writer, I think the guy who originally wrote this, I think he had mentioned in one of the interviews that he originally wrote this as kind of a satire about him and his depression and his like current relationship he was in at the time.
Yeah.
And how it wasn't going well, and he felt that it was kind of sucking the life out of him in a way. Mm-hmm. So like everyone who worked on this film had a slightly different vision for what the film was supposed to be about.
Yeah.
Which I think is part of the reason why when it came out, it didn't do well in the box office.
Well,
whereas now I think people appreciate the fact that there's a lot of points you could go with.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and also it was a directorial debut for this director, and many of the producers working on it, it was their first film, as well as some of the cast. And it is a rough movie, but it's well done still.
Yeah, it's rough. I think it was rough when it came out, and now it kind of holds that 80s rough charm that I think a lot of people kind of now strive for.
Yeah.
We've seen kind of resurgence of the style in general in filmmaking, though obviously now it's a much more polished and attempt at recreating the 80s, whereas this is truly a vintage 80s thing.
It makes me think of, like, sitcoms, how, like, Seinfeld was the pinnacle of sitcoms.
Yeah.
And now everything has tried to
be Seinfeld or Friends.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is very much kind of, it has this, it's not the same level of pinnacle as Seinfeld or Friends, but it has that same, like, rustic, you cannot reproduce this vibe.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, Cage almost wasn't in this movie.
Yeah. That was kind of funny, because now, once you see it, you can't unsee it as anyone but Cage.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And Cage originally wanted to do the role because he wanted to break away from what he had previously done. He had just finished Moonstruck, which is now part of the Criterion Collection, and it was released the day we were supposed to record this episode.
Yeah! We'll get to it next year.
Yeah.
Maybe. Well, no promises.
We'll see. But he originally accepted and then bailed like a week before because the people representing him told him that this was going to be a bad career move. Which
I can see why they would think that.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you just read the plot, like, it's not a strong plot when written down.
No, exactly. And Cage came back like a week before they started filming because he wanted to do it. He's like, screw it. This is something I want to do. And honestly started his trend of doing things that interested him rather than
what he should be doing.
Starting his career, basically.
Yeah, which honestly has become something that I think a lot of people during like the 2000s era of Cage, I don't think a lot of people really grasped that like he was doing stuff because he thought it was interesting.
Yeah. And
now that we all like know that about Cage, like we're going back to all these films being like, yeah, okay, I can see why he picked this.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, okay.
I talked to Elliot about it a while ago, and he mentioned that does Nicolas Cage enhance the movie, or is it just a bad movie to begin with? And that's a lot of the roles he's in, even if it's not a good movie. Yeah, he's a fine actor in it.
Yeah, and I think Vampire's Kiss is a solid one to argue those points on, because And as we'll go through, there's a lot of points of this movie that if a different actor had decided to portray in this movie, I think it would have had a different tone altogether.
Yeah.
Or it would have had a tone in the other direction. It would have been more comedy or more dark.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because I don't think either is right or wrong, but I don't think they would have been the cult classic that Cage made it into.
Exactly. And Cage also mentioned that this is one of his favorite roles he's ever done, and that this was the most experimental.
Yeah.
He was trying to figure out what he wanted to do next.
Which, kudos for him, because, like, he's built a career on doing things that interest him, and then also, you know, really diving into this alternative acting style that a lot of actors, at least in mainstream media, aren't necessarily as deep into. They might take elements from, but like Cage is full on snorkel diving in this sort of acting.
Yeah, during the commentary he mentions Shrek a lot. Not the movie Shrek, but the actor who played Nosferatu.
Yeah, which especially, there's definitely scenes where you can tell that he bothered to rewatch Nosferatu for the how he walks or acts or the facial expressions.
Yes.
Which is all really great, especially because while I don't think a ton of people have seen Nosferatu in recent... I can never say the stupid movie's name.
Nosferatu.
Sure. You know what? If you've got two fangs in the front of your teeth, it's Nosferatu.
Now say Die Nibelungen.
Nope. I can barely speak English.
Eichhörnchen.
Nope.
No, I butcher that word.
But, like, I appreciate that while Nic Cage... I think the reason why I like Nic Cage's over-the-top acting where I don't appreciate other actors over-the-top acting as much is because while Nic Cage does full-heartedly, become that character when he's on set, it's very clear that offset he is choreographing himself.
Yeah.
And not just letting himself become that character all the time. Which, for some actors, I see how it works, and I've appreciated their roles in that, but I like the restraint and the direction that Nic Cage gives himself as almost directing himself.
Yeah, because that's one of the things is Cage was pretty much given free reign over his portrayal of Peter in this movie.
Yeah, and he talked a lot about how, yeah, it all seems over the top and crazy, but he had concepts that he worked out in his hotel room with his cat in the mirror.
Yeah.
Which kudos on him for having a concept and trying to work it out. I think for acting, it kind of can be weird for the audience to try and deal with, but you and I have worked through many a weird building party throughout the years.
Yes.
So we get it. It's always a process, and not every time you attempt to yell boo-hoo on screen is it going to be successful.
Exactly. And this is one of those few movies where it works.
Yeah, it does work, but I can also see why a lot of people feel like this is the Cage-iest film, because he was given free reign, so he wanted to cram as much as he could in. Yeah. And he did.
Yep. And so, let's get into the movie a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Into what kind of is the plot of this movie?
Well, like I said, Cage plays a publicist.
Yeah.
Which...
literary agent, I guess.
Yeah, something like that.
He works in an office.
They've lost a contract that the guy's wanting to dig up in his he's putting all his frustrations on his secretary, which I'll go into that a little bit.
Yeah.
At the same time, he believes he's turning into a vampire.
Yes.
So the movie actually starts off with the skyline of New York City.
A classic.
After rewatching this a handful of times, I have a different feeling of this. It's a very ominous opening. Like, it's not like your stereotypical, like, oh, New York, the lively city.
It's not a bright and shiny New York.
No.
Which is kind of interesting that you managed to pick up on it, because the writer, there was an interview with him where he admits that he kind of has a tendency to write New York as more Gotham and less happy Manhattan.
Yeah.
This isn't the only movie he's done this in. He has done this on a couple of movies that he's worked on. But the way he writes Manhattan and the city life itself, while not as questionable as Gotham. I always wondered how anyone lived in Gotham City as a kid. Like, who wants to live here? This place looks like trash.
Hey, when you're born there, sometimes you can't leave.
I guess, but like, I'd rather go live with Superman in Kansas. That looked much nicer.
Yeah, actually, I don't think I've ever seen a Superman movie.
Oh, we'll get to it, don't worry. I've got a favorite where he runs backwards around the Earth so fast it turns back time.
Yes.
That one's gold. But this one, you can see where the city is still the city, but it's got kind of a dark tinted glasses over it.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of like, if you were in a happy mood, the city would be great and wonderful, but you're not. So the city's not. The city has flaws.
And also they mention, because 80s New York City was different than how we envision it today.
Yeah.
Apparently in 87, like, it was quite dangerous to be there.
Yeah, and we can start talking about where some of the critics and some of the people now looking back on it, kind of 2020 hindsight this movie a little bit. So in the 1980s, the government shut down a lot of state-funded mental hospitals.
Yes, they did bring that up.
Yeah, and because of that, there was a lot of people assumed that people in those institutions would find somewhere to go. Yeah. But they didn't give them any help to do that. And if you're not mentally capable of taking care of yourself, you're probably not going to be able to find somewhere for you to live. Yeah. Especially since a lot of those folks didn't have family to take them in, which just turned into a homeless crisis in America. Yeah. And New York saw a really big hit with it. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, the 80s was like the pinnacle mindset of the American ideal dream, where if you worked hard enough, if you put in the grind and you focused yourself in your career, you could make it big. Yeah. You could be that millionaire. You could be Donald Trump. Yeah. And so there was America didn't yet have where we're starting to go now, with the concept that mental health isn't just something that you have to worry about once you've completely lost it. It's something that you should work on every day, just like normal health.
Yeah, it's like Marcus Parks from last podcast on the left says, mental health is not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yeah, and the 80s Americana, especially movies like this where they're trying to portray the like successful businessman Americana, no one was ready for that, either financially, institutionally, or even just in their heart ready to take that responsibility and acceptance.
Yeah.
So this movie kind of has a weird double standard where we see a man who very much fits that problem, and we see it throughout the whole movie where this is kind of the underlying current of the movie.
Yeah.
But it's never as directly addressed as I think a lot of critics thought it was going to be.
Yeah, and that's something we can go into a little bit later, because the themes really show up later in the movie. Yeah,
we start off very much in the American dream. Nick Cage he's hardworking. Yeah, he's an asshole, but you know what? You gotta be an asshole to be at the top.
Well, he's immediately talking to a psychiatrist.
So we know that he's got some trouble, but, he's got a big paycheck. He can afford these little sessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, at this time, we first hear the various voices that Nicolas Cage uses in this movie.
Oh, the voices.
He starts off with saying that, this part was based off of his father.
Interesting concept.
His dad was a literary professor, so there's that certain air to it.
Yeah.
And he was trying to be impressive and continental.
Yes, which is, I think, where a lot of people interpret the almost bad British accent coming from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels very old-timey movie talk.
It does feel old-timey movie talk, but it kind of works in a weird way where it lets the audience know that this person on screen isn't trying to be the character that was written for them. The character on screen is trying to be a character to impress and to put on themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
He's pretending to be something he's not.
Yeah, and also that he I don't know. It's a weird thing that we see people even in like our office and stuff do, where they're completely he's putting on different faces with the different situations he's in.
He's got a mask for every situation, and he's got to keep them all straight.
Yeah,
and that's exhausting.
Yeah, and Bierman also points out in the commentary that he starts off with the city as a back piece, and so the more Peter's delirium intensifies, the city becomes more and more encompassing. Yeah. So, which
I like, because especially New York and the way they've portrayed it has a weird like twist to it, that where depending on where you are and which side of the screen you're standing on, it can encompass a lot of things all at once, which works for this movie.
Yeah, which I know someone who just recently moved out to New York City. I should have asked them what it's like, but we're also in COVID, so it's not the same, I would probably say.
Probably not.
She started a podcast as well called Transcontinental Tea.
Wow, fun!
It's quite fun. It's about relationships and lifestyle, and not something I would have expected myself enjoying, but I'm quite liking it. So, but yeah, I should have asked her what it's like out there now. But yeah, I don't know. I've never lived in a big city myself. So I don't know. I mean, I've been to large cities, but I've never lived there. So there's...
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah, because we would go for like a day or two and then go back. But
yeah, you're seeing it as a tourist, whereas you don't have a neighborhood. You don't have a corner shop.
It's day after day after day of...
You get, I think you adjust.
Yeah, exactly. And so... we cut away to him out to eat, dining. He's, I think at this point he's still recounting like the events from the night before.
Yes.
And he's at this hotel or not, fancy restaurant.
Yeah, fancy restaurant.
And he's throwing on the charm to the girl behind him.
He is quite the ladies' man in this movie.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But they actually, Bierman mentioned that before shooting the scene, the morning before, they had to carry a dead body out.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, at this point, they leave they're doing the stereotypical hookup.
Yeah, it's a one night stand.
Yeah, heading upstairs to the room, but their evening fun is interrupted by a bat.
A very rotund little bat. He's a
yes,
chubby bat
that comes through the window, and dives at Peter as his lady friend runs into the hallway in her skivvies.
Yes, and it is exactly what you imagine it to be.
It's super cheesy.
It is so cheesy, but it kind of helps start like this is the peak of the humor, and it's gonna just slowly the humor is always gonna be there, but this is like the light jovial humor where we haven't quite hit darkness just yet.
Exactly. Side few little things about the behind the scenes on this. That bat was made by the Star Wars special effects team.
That explains the rotundness.
Also, apparently it was like broken when they got it, because I think they shipped it from like London.
Oh.
And so they had to like stick it together and get it to work. That's why it's so shortly in the movie.
I mean, it's okay.
But also at this time, we have to remember Cage was super into like his method acting, and he believed that they had to have a real bat.
Of course he would.
Even to the point where he even had assistants sent out into Central Park to find a bat.
They're not going to catch a bat, but okay.
Yeah. He also had a bat skeleton in his hotel room.
Bat skeletons are dope, though. They're pretty cool looking. I'll give him that one.
Oh, yeah. No, I like bones.
Bones are cool.
I like bones and taxidermy.
Yeah, and bat skeletons are particularly interesting. So I get that one.
Oh, yeah. And I think it ended up, Bierman straight up told Cage that he would die if the thing actually bit him. He could get rabies.
I mean, yeah, you can get rabies from bats very easily.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Cage's lady's friend is out in her underwear in the hallway.
Yep.
With a little kid looking down on her.
Like you do.
Yep. While Cage is, fighting off the bat.
Yes. And
as he leaves, he touches his neck.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so it's weird because he's done talking about it. They run off into the night, and now it's back to him in his office.
Yeah. I think it was very much like for the character that Cage is portraying. I think his name's Peter. Mm-hmm. You can tell that to him that this was meant to be like a one-night stand, probably not going to ever talk to you again. By. Like, this gal truly meant almost nothing to him.
Exactly. Yeah. And we do see later that she doesn't, because he's kind of mean to her. He bails on her on a date. But we get a little insight into what's actually bothering Peter right now. We know he's a successful publicist.
Yep.
Or whatever his job is.
I don't know. He yells at people.
He's a ladies' man.
He is a ladies' man.
But in this, we find out that he has other intentions. He wants to. He harasses his assistant or secretary like a little boy harasses his crush.
Yeah, but he's a grown-ass man who should know better.
Yeah.
That's the difference here. But like, I see where Cage was trying to go with the character portrayal, because he's never been told no before.
Yeah.
And he's a successful guy. There's no reason why she shouldn't like him.
Yeah.
And so, it's also portrayed that like this isn't the first time he's like made advances towards her, and she's told him no before.
Yeah.
Probably not directly, because it's the 80s and this is a dark humor.
Oh yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even to the point where he's watching her meet up with supposedly boyfriend. We don't see anything about him other than this one scene.
Yeah, we're gonna assume boyfriend.
Yeah, and just watches them because
he's a creepy man.
Yes.
Creepy child man.
Yeah, very much like Nosferatu.
Yeah. Yeah,
or Dracula.
It definitely has like the old-timey vampire vibes where it's like, I am watching you through the window.
Yeah. And so for me, this is with rewatching, because the first time I watched this, some of the events that happened later I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, which is fair. I think that's kind of
Yeah.
part of the movie.
Because rewatching it, this is much more ominous.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing what's to come.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a movie where if you've seen it before and you rewatch it, the subtleties in the plot make a lot more sense, and not just make more sense, but like everything has a darker vibe to it. Yeah. Whereas the first time you watch it, he's acting like a child baby, but like maybe he's just a man-child. And then later, if you rewatch it the second time, you're like, oh no, this guy needs help.
This guy's a serial killer in the making.
This guy's
there's a reason he's seeing a psychiatrist, which in the next scene he's telling her his turn-ons. Yeah,
which, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a scene.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. But, like, he also talks about his encounter with Rachel.
Oh, Rachel.
Which, I have questions.
Yeah, I think everyone has questions about Rachel.
She is the enigma to the movie.
She is.
'Cause...
Is Rachel real?
Yeah, exactly, that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, so he meets Rachel, and instead of being the sweet 80s damsel that he's used to, she is a feisty, domineering sort of person.
Yeah, she is.
Who is a vampire?
She's into biting play or something.
Potentially.
/ she's also potentially the manifestation of his psychosis.
Yeah, exactly. So there's the potential that Rachel never existed to begin with.
Yes.
And then there's the thought that maybe Rachel existed in the first meeting and their first encounter, and he just never had met a woman who isn't the damsel-y sort of woman.
Yes.
A more dominant woman.
Didn't know what he wanted. And she leaves and never sees him again. And the rest of the Rachels in this movie are all fake Rachels. And I've got a theory on this.
Or she's an actual vampire and haunts him around for the whole movie.
Yes. But Rachel was originally cast the Monday before they started filming.
Ooh, close call.
And Tuesday, or hired Monday and then started filming on Tuesday.
Ooh, that's a quick turnaround.
Because the original actress's fiance didn't want her to be in bed with Cage.
I understand. I mean, look at the man.
He is a heartthrob.
He's a heartthrob.
Well, I think he definitely does have that classic Italian look.
Oh yeah, he definitely. And I've known a fair share of people who do think younger Cage anyway was good looking, and then on top of that, this is one of his earlier films where, if all you know of him is the work on film, I could see how as a romantic partner you wouldn't be comfortable with that.
Yes. Personal experience here. But yeah. Anywho, so Cage is up in the morning to make her coffee in bed.
I mean, that's the nicest he's been all movie.
Yes. Turns out, the song he's whistling was the most expensive part of the production because it was a Stravinsky song that he thought was in public domain.
Nope, it is not.
And
not that one anyway.
Yeah, they
had to pay for that?
Yeah, they had to pay for that because there was no way they could edit it out, and it was clearly that song.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd pick a different one either, so...
No.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I mean, it works.
Yeah. And so, it cuts to Cage out on a date with the girl from the first night.
Yeah, the one that he was rude to. Kind of. I mean, he left her in the hall in her underwear.
She ran out in the hall in her underwear.
Guy didn't try real hard to help, though.
He was fighting a bat.
I've fought bats before. It's not that hard.
But, yeah, they're at an art museum, and he leaves her.
Yes, he does. He just ditches her, straight up ditches her.
Yep.
Like, I gotta go bathroom, bye.
Yep. And, she yells at him over the payphone, which... That was done on the street, so the people behind her's reaction is real because...
There's a lot of, I wasn't hired for this background person in this movie.
Yeah, or the producers had to step in as a background person because...
Yeah, a lot of that too.
Again, this was a very...
This was low budget.
Low budget and amateur film.
Yeah, but it's kind of nice in a way. Like, obviously, like, I don't want people who don't want to be on a movie to end up in a movie.
Yeah.
That's something that I've never really liked about some film styles, but at the same time, like, you can't get that reaction any other way.
Nope.
And I I appreciate it for this film.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what adds to the charm of the stupidness of this movie at points.
Because the people in the background clearly can see how stupid it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the main character and, like, a handful of people around him who seem to be oblivious to the dumb stupidness that they are.
Yeah. So basically she says, I don't want to see you again. Don't ever call me.
Yep.
And Cage is lamenting on the couch. And he mentioned this is his favorite line in the movie.
Yes.
Well, fuck you too.
It's so stupid.
It's such a... It's, what's the term? Those, how the edgy boys in high school saw themselves.
Oh, yeah.
The lamenting romantic.
Very much where, like, you're the main character in the story sort of thing.
Yeah.
When in reality, it's not that big a deal. Calm down, homie.
Yeah. I was guilty of that a little. I think everyone. Yeah.
That's a thing of being a teenager, I think. Everyone was guilty of it.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're back to the office. And
this is it.
Cage is still taking his anger out on Alva.
I don't know why this gal still works for him, to be very frank with you.
Yeah.
Like, she should have left a long time ago.
Yeah.
He must be paying her real well.
Well, we can get into that in a little bit too.
Yeah.
Because also at this part is the iconic
this is it.
Crazy-iest Cage.
This is Crazy Cage.
Because he it's not that part yet. It's the part where he points at her.
It's a lot of pointing.
It's that one.
It's a lot of pointing.
Because Bierman just let Cage do what he wanted, and he just gets crazier and crazier until he eventually becomes overexposed in the shots because they set it for a specific lighting, and when he moves forward and points, he's out of their light.
Yeah.
So yeah, and both Cage and Bierman said so much of this movie was just instinct.
Yeah.
Of them just like, well, we're going to make a movie. If it works, it works.
Yeah, and Cage also talks about a lot of his movements being choreographed, almost like a dance. Where, they're over the top and crazy, but in, like, an impressionistic dance sort of way.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, once you... If you just hear him say, like, I thought all this through, you're like, no, you didn't. But when you hear, like, no, this is, like, me attempting to be over the top, it makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because... it does. It just kind of continued to build, and you can see the point where he's like, all right, this is the height where normal actors would take it. I'm going to start here and, like, see if I can go above that.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
And he does.
Yeah. And so I just realized something, because after this part, Cage tries patching it up with a girl again, giving her a call saying, I'm sorry.
He's such,
shouldn't have done that.
He's one of those guys that, like, is horrible to you and then, like, drags you on. And, like, to him, he doesn't see it as that way, but I'm sure from her point of view, she's just like, this guy keeps coming back, and I've made it very clear, and he has made it very clear that he's not interested in reality. Yeah. But, like, he's the lamenting teenage child.
Yeah, exactly. Because, because the other part, too, is he calls up the guy to say, Alva, he wants this, and you're going to have to listen to me, have to listen to him chew me out over this, because otherwise, how are you going to learn what I have to deal with? And it blows up in his face because the guy is super chill about it.
Yeah, it's
like,
hilarious.
It's not a big deal, and it just seems like something like he's just pawning work off because he's frustrated at her.
It does. In this part of the scene, it definitely does. But at the same time, you can almost read this as like, this is the thing he's fixated on. So to him, this is a huge deal, and he doesn't understand why everyone else doesn't feel the same way.
Yeah, and every time something like that happens,
it just kind of like sets him off.
And then it cuts to him trying to relieve it in other manners.
Yeah, none of which are healthy or well-adjusted.
Yeah, like a serial killer.
This is very much one of those movies where you're like, I could keep going, but that's not where you went with it, did you, director?
Nope.
That's okay.
And we have another encounter with Rachel in bed.
Again, vampire lady.
Her
returns.
taking over his life, knocking him down.
Yeah.
You will not escape me. I'm here.
Yeah, which at this point in the movie, you're still convinced to an extent that, like, she's maybe in his head, but like, maybe she's just a vampire. Maybe we actually have vampires in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I like this level of mindfuckery in this kind of movie because it doesn't really matter with the outcome of the movie. But at the same time, like, you spend a lot of time being like, well, maybe.
Maybe.
I like the maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. So, after this, he's doing jack shit at his desk.
He is truly working in the office.
Still has nothing.
He's not looking for the file, but he wants other people to be.
Runs out and jumps on the desk.
Just box style jumps on the desk.
Which, that was Bierman's direction.
It was, and Nic Cage thought it was hilarious and was very much into it.
Yeah, because know...
It's so, like, an intense jump, too. It's like both knees at the same time. Wah!
And we've worked with people who would do stuff like that.
Yeah, I have definitely worked with people who do this shit.
Exactly.
And to them, it's like, I have all this energy, and it's mostly emotional, but the only way I know how to deal with it is to jump on things. And you're like, but why? Excuse you.
Yeah. And so, he chases Alva into a bathroom.
Which, not cool, dude.
No.
Bathrooms are off limits. Bathrooms are, like, safety zones. That's where you cry and do your makeup and take a selfie.
Yeah. I guess, maybe.
Yeah.
A weird safe haven, but alright.
That is, if he is the high school embodiment of, like, mental and emotional intelligence in this movie, then he knows that, like, at a high school age, the bathroom, at least for girls, the bathroom is, like, the safe haven where you go with your friends because you have to cry, you have to fix your makeup, or you want to go gossip.
Yeah.
And like, what goes in the bathroom stays in the bathroom.
Interesting.
And so the fact that he's breaking that barrier in a mindset of, like, that's the level of, like, emotional intelligence he's displaying for this movie.
Yeah.
That kind of, like, sets it, I think, that's the part of the movie where it's supposed to show, like, he has no boundaries anymore. He's lost the boundaries. All's fair game now. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of lost because, at least to the audience, I think, until you've watched it a couple times, and, like, especially after you know the ending, because you're still under the impression that he is an adult man who should know his own shit. Yeah. And in the adult world, the bathroom is a bathroom most of the time. Like, it's just, like, it can be that thing if you're trying to, like, relive a girls' night for some people. But for the most part, bathroom is bathroom. Yeah. And it's whatever. No one gives a shit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you are giving shits to the toilets.
Is bathroom humor.
Yeah. And so he corners her, and there's some old lady in there who's...
Oh, poor old lady.
She's not doing shit either.
No, she's an old lady in a woman's bathroom. That's what they do.
Yeah.
You just kind of stand in the bathroom. It's fine.
And so she tells him to back off, and he's kind of coming down a little bit.
Yeah. You could see where maybe this is the part where we could have taken two different paths. Yeah. But it's this movie. Yeah. We're not going to take the wholesome path.
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, then it cuts right from that to him in a boardroom with a bunch of other higher-ups.
Doing board stuff.
No, just having boys will be boys conversation of oh, we heard you chased Alva into the bathroom.
Yeah, it's very much like, this movie has a lot of things that are so 80s that, like, now watching it, we're like, really? This is where we chose to go? But, like, I grew up with people, like, older cousins and stuff, who, that was just the talk. This is just dude talk.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we have lads night, so that way I can vent my weird shit and not have to tone down a little. Well, I should tone down sometimes, but, yeah. But, yeah, and he seems almost disinterested in this as well.
Yeah, like, it's very clear that, like, he's not emotionally connecting anymore. Yeah. But, like, we're so focused on the vampire part of this movie that you've forgotten that this guy should probably go see his psychiatrist a little more frequently. Yeah. Like, this is a sign that he's not doing well. Like, you're not getting the emotional response that you need. You're emotionally exhausted, and the only emotion he's feeling is anger.
Yeah. And at this time, he's supposed to... the next part, he's also supposed to be having a meeting that girl for a date, which
Yeah.
he's blowing her off while he destroys his apartment.
Yeah, he just wrecks the place.
Yeah, and Alva flees back to her home.
Which, good for her.
Yeah.
Leave, homie.
Exactly.
Get out.
Other side note, the glass in that scene and those scenes was real.
Yeah, I heard them talk about that, and the director mentioned, he's like, yeah, we had one take, and like, you can't do this shit anymore. Like, letting an actor, like the actual actor, not even a stunt person, just go ham with all real glass. Not safe.
No.
Not even a little safe.
No.
But the director does make a good point that fake glass, especially like once you see real glass break, doesn't look like real glass. It's passable, especially for action movies where you don't give a shit. But like the scene where he punches the mirror and it breaks, you don't get that same effect with fake glass and fake mirrors anymore.
Or safety glass.
Yeah, with safety glass. And most of the time it's done in post to make it look more realistic, but there is no post for this movie.
Yeah.
What you see is what you're getting, at least, you know, as far as a special effect like that goes. And so, while I don't think they will ever do this again,
no,
especially not nowadays, I do kind of like it because the sound is right. Like the glass sound is a hard sound to recreate.
Yeah.
And the mirror scene especially, like, that is so... It's such an important part of this movie that, like, if it had been done with safety glass, it would not have felt the same.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's a interesting pairing because they do a good job of making it feel like she is in danger. Because, like, up until then, he's just been verbally abusive, and this is the first time it's gotten close to being physically.
Yeah, up until this point, it's mostly just been like, wow, this guy's an asshole. But, like, not a dangerous asshole, just an asshole that you'd rather not have to deal with if you could. And at this part of the movie, you realize, like, oh, no, this guy's coming undone. Yeah. Like, this is the part of the movie where you're like, oh no, homie.
Yeah, because now he's even lashing out at his psychiatrist, where he's telling her about this file that's missing. How do you miss it? It should be alphabetical. And she's like, well, maybe someone misplaced it. He's like, why would someone misplace it? Do they not know how to spell? I've never misspelled anything in my life. A, B, C, D, E, F.
Just through the whole alphabet.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, it is an interesting take because you've, as the audience, reached a point where you're no longer trying to connect with him as a character. You're now just watching him spiral. Yeah. And from the audience point of view, you see where the psychiatrist is coming. She's not saying, like, someone misspelt it. Someone just put it somewhere it's not supposed to be. Maybe it's on someone's desk. It's not been filed yet. But he can't think that thought. Exactly. Like, that's not a possibility to him. Nope. And so this is the part where the movie, I think, for the audience anyway, where you spend the rest of the movie now wondering if the first half was real, and then also waiting for, like, the shit to hit the fan. Yeah, exactly. It's that weird equilibrium because he's clearly full crazy here. Yeah, and it's also becoming really clear that, like, he has lost the ability to actually, like, receive help. Yeah. Like, he went to his psychiatrist, but he went there not, like, trying to get help. He clearly went because it was on the schedule and that's what he does. That's his routine. Yeah. And it was just another person to bitch to. Yeah, it's no longer like, I'm trying to get better. It's like, why can't you find the file too? Yep. And it's like, because that's not her job. Yeah. And we also have to remember all this time he's slowly convincing himself he's turning into a vampire. Oh yeah, no, which is part of the weird dark humor part. Because I think if he wasn't trying to convince himself he was a vampire, this whole movie would have a totally different tone. Oh yeah. And he even begins, like, wearing sunglasses inside. Yeah, he's full on convinced that he is turning into a vampire. Like, mirrors hurt him. Which is hilarious because if he had, like, like, Cage himself clearly knows because he bothered to put certain parts into his character. But, like, the mirror would not hurt him because mirrors aren't made of silver anymore. That's why vampires can't see their reflection. It's because old-timey mirrors were made of silver. Oh, yeah, true. It's nothing to do with your soul being a reflection. No. It's all about silver. And so the mirror should not hurt him. But he doesn't know that.
No, because
he's not a real vampire.
Yeah, he's an idiot.
Because he's an idiot, which I like. And then when physical changes don't happen, like, his fangs don't show up. And that really bothers him for some reason.
Because he's a vampire.
He's a vampire. So does he, like, accept that he doesn't have fangs? No, he goes out and buys those cheap $1 mouth nom 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 fangs, like the full set fangs you get as a kid in a party pack. Puts those bad boys in, is like, this is who I am now, Mom.
That was my addition to my Halloween costume this year.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
You will slowly become all the Cages.
I will. For those who don't know, my Halloween costume is every year I add an element of a Cage film too. Yeah. It's been fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he calls Alva into his office and he blames his behavior on mescaline.
Sure, man. Whatever.
And this is where we get the crazy eyes.
Yes. Cage himself said he wanted to see how big he could get his eyes.
Exactly.
And I think the actress who plays Alva even admitted, she's like, yeah, during the scene I was legitimately afraid. Those eyes were too much.
Yeah. No.
These are the eyes that you meme. This is the face.
Yeah. Exactly.
This is the eyebrows up in my hairline, eyeballs coming out of my face, Cage.
Yes. And so, we, at this point, like, we've talked about, like, his psychotic behavior.
Yeah.
This is where it really starts to...
He's spiraling.
Start really cutting into his
professional life, anyway.
And, well, real world life, too, because before, all his tantrums have been... alone.
At home, or potentially even just in his head.
Yeah, exactly. But now he's walking down a street and he's triggered by a neon cross.
Which is hilarious to me.
Even leaving his groceries behind, which some dude's nice enough to pick it up and try and have him come back.
Someone's like, sir, your groceries. And he's just like, I'm a vampire.
Yeah. But this is where we really start...
This is the full, like, tailspin, meow, spiral.
Yeah, where he's starting to keep things more to himself. He's tried...
In his mind, he's tried talking about it, and it didn't work. He's tried finding other outlets, that didn't work. So now he's just gonna embrace the crazy.
Yes, and this is the scene where he touches the mirror, burns himself.
It's so stupid.
And eats a cockroach.
Yeah, which... The cockroach was originally supposed to be a raw egg, but Cage said that he wanted to really shock his audience with this movie, which he'd already done by the box jumping, the pointing, the alphabeting, and the eyeballs. And he thought that this would be the thing that really puts the audience over the edge. He wanted, like, the audience to make audible noises while they were watching the film, and he didn't think a raw egg would do that. So
no, because, I mean, shit, we've seen Rocky and...
Yeah, raw egg, like, if you... ate it grossly would look gross, but like it wouldn't be as revolting as like picking a cockroach, a New York City cockroach up out of your nasty ass apartment and shoving it in your mouth.
Yeah, honestly, what is it with like eating bugs that's...
It's alive. That's the problem. I think a lot of people, it's the fact that it is still moving.
Yeah, because, I mean, we saw that in Tokyo Gore Police.
Yeah.
Tyler, the Creator, did it on Yonkers music video.
I also think that, at least especially for cockroaches themselves, cockroaches has always been associated with dirty conditions, with being unkept, and then also with, like, at least in movies, they've always been portrayed as, like, associated with death. So, like, they're around a dead body, or in the tomb of the unkept dead king.
Okay.
And so, like, even though... The reality of this cockroach is that it was a professionally bred and kept cockroach that was incredibly clean and safe for consumption.
Yeah.
And that, like, humans around the world have eaten bugs for millennia. It's the fact that, A, it's alive, it's in a New York City apartment, and then this is a movie cockroach. So, like, we're supposed to associate it with all the nasty, gross, crawly bits of the city. It'd be a little bit like if Nic Cage had walked outside, picked up Pizza Rat, and licked it.
Interesting.
Like, that's the level, like, even... Yeah. Like, at least that's the imagery he was going for.
Okay, yeah, it's like vermin, basically.
Yeah. It's supposed to be, like... honestly, for this scene, like, only a cockroach could have sufficed. Because it's, like, just like how rat is, like, the embodiment of vermin for cities, cockroach is, like, the bug of the city. Even if that's not true.
Yeah. Okay. I see that.
And then the best part is if it makes you feel better watching the scene, Nic Cage actually did eat 2 whole cockroaches for this scene.
Nice. Good on him.
Live cockroaches. Just popped them in his mouth and ate them.
Yeah.
Nasty.
Yeah, okay.
Crunchy on the outside, gooshy on the inside.
I'm also someone who's curious in eating head cheese. So,
yeah. Well, and, like, I've eaten bugs. Like, I've been to Disney World. I've had the grasshopper thing. Okay. Like, my family has traveled to Mexico and brought me back, like, the ants and stuff. And, like, bugs themselves, depending on how you make them, are not, like, a problem to eat. Yeah. It's the fact that it's alive. And, like, he picked it up off his nasty, never-cleaned counter.
It's like when people eat, like, live octopus and stuff.
Yeah, like, I love octopus. Octopus is delicious. I do not want it to attack my mouth.
Okay.
I like my food dead.
Yeah. I agree. But, anywho, part of this, the cockroach eating, that led to that whole tangent.
It's such a tangent.
It was part of the director's idea to show his progression. Mm-hmm. So we see this in serial killers as well, of them giving themselves little allowances and building themselves up.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Yeah, like how Ed Kemper would, first he kept a knife under his seat, then he kept a gun.
Sure.
Sometimes he'd he'd put people in the car, and then he slowly worked up to eventually killing and decapitating a woman.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of disorders in general, like the start of a spiral usually is like I'll just have a little cheat.
Yeah.
And granted, I don't think a cockroach is a little cheat. I think the little cheats were earlier when he let his temper go. But like this to him is him saying like, oh, what if I just try it?
Yeah.
What if I just let it happen?
Yeah, well, I'm already turning. I might as well do it.
Like, I'm already a dark creature of the night. I might as well embrace it.
Yes. That kind of.
Yeah, it from the character's point of view, it's very much like that's the character's thought process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so after this, as he goes into the office, we cut to Alva at her house, where she's trying to skip work, and her mom's saying, no, you have to go. We're not going to pay for your stuff. If you don't go, you have a good job. You can't skip this.
Yeah, which I can see where her mom's trying to come from, but I think the character Ava, I'm not saying I would want it for this movie, but I'm saying that, like, if this had been a book, I would have appreciated more chapters about her. Because she kind of comes off as a person who doesn't have a whole lot of self, like a voice for herself.
Yeah.
And so, like, she's probably told her mom, like, oh, I hate work, and her mom doesn't quite get what she means by it, or, like, she hasn't fully explained to her coworkers or her mom or HR, if there is one, like, the true situation that's going on.
Yeah.
Like, she knows that it's wrong, but she can't articulate it to people, and she doesn't quite have that self-worth built up yet to stand up for herself.
Yeah.
Which is sad, because, like, it's clear that her mom is meaning well, like, no, you need to keep a job, you finally got a job, it pays well, this is a good job, as opposed to, like, no, your boss is a dick, let's go find a new job.
Yeah. And for me, I quite like the positioning of this scene, because it's a contrast between Cage's mania and Alva, who is how the world really is.
Yeah, and also, like, dealing with shit in different ways. Like, she's taking it all very internally, whereas Cage is letting it all kind of, like, ooze out into his reality at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Peter asks, where's Alva?
Oh, asshole Peter.
She called in sick? Alright, well, I'm gonna go out and go to her house.
Like the asshole he is.
Yeah, pulls her address from the Rolodex. I think that's what those are called.
The spinny thing? Yeah, it's a Rolodex.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's another thing that's like, I've never had to deal with them. I've seen them in older movies, but
I had one as a kid, because I was a weird-ass child who thought they were fun.
Interesting.
I didn't have any names to put in it. All my friends lived, like, down the street from me. But, like, I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Spin it. It was alphabetized. I don't even know what I had in it. I think it was just empty.
Yeah, it's kind of like in middle school and high school where they gave you planners.
Yeah, and I didn't use it all.
No, exactly.
I did the same thing every day. I don't need a planner.
Exactly. And so he shows up while she's ironing her shirt
Like you do.
In her bra. I mean, at the front window.
The front window is the part that I disagree with. I have put on a shirt and been like, this looks terrible. Let me go iron it real quick. And instead of putting on a t-shirt, I'm like, this is my house. If I want to wear my bra, I wear my bra.
Yeah.
But it's the window part where you're like, really, honey?
Yeah.
You couldn't have, like, I don't know, rotated or something?
Yeah.
Put the curtain down? Anything?
No, yeah, it's just a weird...
It's very much set up to be another, like, Pee-Pee Tommy weird scene. Again.
Yeah, which is exactly what he does. He shows up and,
is nasty.
He's like, I heard you weren't feeling well. I took a taxi to see how you're doing. I brought soup.
Lying little son of a bitch.
Can you imagine, like...
if your boss showed up to your house with soup when you weren't feeling good?
Not even just that, just, like, any guy in general would be like, hey, baby...
I got some soup.
Got soup for you, baby.
I would be so mad. Bring me like Chinese takeout.
That would be dope.
I want soup.
I make dope soup though.
But also, like, it's been very clearly like established that he's never been nice to her.
No,
ever. Even before the movie starts. So like the fact that he is bringing her soup because she doesn't feel well, like it's not him like fooling anyone but himself.
Yeah.
She knows that this is bullshit, but she doesn't have the like. She doesn't have the cojones to be like, no, fuck you. Stay out there.
Yeah, exactly. And he shows up to try and, like, set a truce.
Yeah, like in his mind, he's like, oh, we'll find my middle ground.
Yeah.
Not our middle ground. Mine.
No, not even that. He's just like, let's clear the slate. We'll go back to the office. We'll get you doing something. Expensive taxi ride. Yeah,
he very much is, like, trying to, like, tell himself he's being a good person right now.
Yeah.
Even though, like, she clearly does not enjoy any of this and would like him to leave.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that's part of, like, this is part of the spiral. This is him being like, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. This is normal. This is how my life has always been. And it's like, yeah, but no. You're not reading the other people in the room, sir.
Exactly. And, I mean, it is all part of his plan because she's like, all right, well, he's like, I'll go there. And he's like, no, we can take the taxi together.
Yeah, I'll pay for it.
Yeah, and so once they're in the taxi is when True Peter comes out.
Yeah, Vampire Peter.
The work never goes away.
No.
And he's told her that she is not going to leave until she finds the contract.
Which, at this point, the audience is even wondering if the contract is real.
Yeah.
Like, maybe it's fake. Maybe... he never wrote it up.
I just think it was misfiled. Like that.
Yeah, there's always like you never know.
Yeah,
you never know about the contract.
Exactly. And then on their way back, she says, "Hey, I need to drop some money off for my brother. Can we stop here real quick?"
Yeah.
And while she's in there, everything's working against her. And
oh yeah, everything really is. This poor girl's. The world is not in her favor today.
Because she does have a gun, but the brother doesn't have blanks. She's not supposed to have the gun to begin with. It's just to scare someone off. And he says, well, we don't have bullets. We have blanks for it.
Yeah, which kudos on her for at least, like, having the foresight to, like, try. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like many a Western man has said, gun ain't worth anything if it ain't loaded.
Yeah.
Which is also, like, a double-edged sword, though. So, like, I see where this movie's trying to go with it.
Yep. But, and even then, like, the brother's just like, hey, we all have these kind of things at work. You know, you just gotta work through it. Yeah,
it's very clear that, like, she hasn't articulated to her family, like, how crazy her boss is.
Yeah.
And, like, it's also possible that she didn't think he'd go this far.
Exactly. I mean, hell, I wouldn't expect any boss to go this far.
Yeah, especially, like, and even, like, I've had terrible bosses. I think everyone has. But, like, you don't expect them to show up at your house and kidnap you.
Yeah.
You just kind of, like, have to deal with them from 9 to 5.
Yep.
And then bitch about them to your friends.
Exactly.
Yeah, like, which is, so, like, it's one of those weird rocky places where, like, if this was a book, her character would probably have more. But, like, this is a movie about Cage and his spiraling, so, like...
Yeah, and she's not the main character of the movie, so...
No. Which is interesting, because, like, her character... Like, without her, Cage's spiral would have been, like, no one would have noticed or cared. Like, he probably would have just not shown up to work one day, and, like, that would have been the end of it.
Yeah. Well, and also, I think it's interesting because what we normally see in these types of movies is the woman is the main character and it's about her plight.
Oh, yeah. Or, like, the guy is spiraling, but, like, the main... Some kind soul takes pity on him and, like, yeah, he never recovers truly, but, like, he at least is finding help in a peaceful pasture somewhere in Kansas.
That's what they mean by taking him out back to the shed and shooting him.
But this movie doesn't bother to have the happy ending. She has the gun, she has blanks, she fires one to try and scare him away.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, this is it. That's the way out. Like, I've clearly lost it. Time for me to die. But they're blanks, and so now he's convinced he's immortal. Yeah,
well, it's going to lead to that, too. Just because now that we're back at the office, we have the famous mirror scene where mirror scene. He looks... and this is the only scene I'd seen of the movie before buying it.
Uh-huh. This is a good one to start off with, I guess.
Because it's just him looking in the mirror saying, my God, I can't see myself.
Where he's clearly in the reflection.
Well, and so there's two mirrors.
Yeah.
You see him in one, but in the other you can't see him because of the camera angle. And then it pans over a little bit, and then you can see his reflection.
Like it's in his head. It's completely in his head, and so this is where he's like, all right, time to be full vampire.
Yeah, and some dude in the shitter yells at him, go back to Hollywood or some shit like that.
So funny.
Oh yeah. And so at this point, we cut that Rachel is now in the office.
Yeah, she's stalking him.
She's feeding on him.
Yeah.
And this is the first time we've seen her outside of his house.
Yeah.
And at this point as well, Alva finds the contract.
She did it!
But it's too late.
It is. It fortunately doesn't matter anymore.
As Cage says, it's too late. And starts chasing her. Like, even his posture is...
It's all creepy.
It's
hunchy.
Nosferatu.
It's very like, hee.
Yeah. Cartoony
sneaky,
running.
Sneaky.
Yeah, and this is when Cage mentions that he went full Shrek. Again, a reference to Max Shrek, who played Nosferatu.
Yes.
In 1922.
Which, if you haven't seen, it is a delightful movie.
Yeah, I liked it.
I did too.
The lads weren't too thrilled with it when I was watching it.
Brian just doesn't watch things with no noise.
Yeah. And so this is the part where the gun has a key roll. Peter has cornered her, and he's like, what are you gonna do? Shoot me? Shoot me! Shoot me! And
she's not gonna shoot him.
She pulls the trigger, and there's no bullets.
Yeah.
And so, of course, he thinks he's a vampire.
Yeah.
Which he then proceeds to rape her.
Yeah.
And then...
Not cool, dude.
Yeah, and then tries killing himself.
Which doesn't work, because he's a vampire.
Yes. And this is kind of an interesting part, too, because, one, I didn't see the movie going this far.
Yeah. No, this is, like, the beginning of this movie, you're so set up for the humor part.
Yeah.
You're not ready for how dark this one goes.
Yeah, and, like... It's a pretty intense scene. Like, I mean, it's not irreversible or I spit on your grave intense.
Oh, yeah.
But it's still like... Because up until this, it's kind of just been this...
There's not been any consequences to anyone but Cage.
Yeah, it's just been this kind of, like, romp through this guy's deterioration.
And, like, at no point do you think that, like, his deterioration, while he's rude and mean to other people, you don't expect him to, like, assault someone.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, again, he tries killing himself with the gun. They said this was, like, one of the hardest shots to do because you can't do that with blanks because you can actually kill yourself.
Yeah, just because it's a blank doesn't mean it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, there's stuff that's still going to be coming out of it.
Yeah, and, like, don't put guns in your mouth.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
And... Cage proceeds to run, and he takes her cross necklace, kind of like a trophy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little...
serial killer-like.
Yeah, but also I think this is, like, the last potential part of the Peter character's, like, hope for maybe coming back.
Yeah, he's straight up going into berserker mode.
Oh yeah, he's lost it. He's completely lost it.
And so this is the part where he tries to, by the teeth.
Yeah, yes.
where he's at this Chinese store, which dude has a dope like Baphomet sigil shirt. I think my buddy Sugi has that same shirt because I saw it, I paused it, I was like, hey, check this out. Yeah,
found a shirt.
But like he's looking at these like $20 resin.
Oh yeah,
teeth.
He wants the nice ones, the costume cosplay teeth.
But
he doesn't have that money.
He can't afford it, quote unquote, even though he spent
he could totally
$40 on a taxi drive.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where like he probably could afford it, but like in his head he can't afford it.
Yeah. So
because I think this is also part of him like his subconscious being like, but you're not a real vampire.
Yeah.
You can't afford the nice teeth. You get the shitty teeth.
Yeah, and so he decides to go with the plastic teeth and run down the road saying, I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire! So I know, a lot of people make fun of this run.
It is hilarious.
So the story behind that is the run he was doing before, they couldn't keep up with him with the camera.
Fair. He's quick.
Yeah, I mean, Cage is an athletic dude.
He is an athletic dude, and, like, he's not gonna hold back.
Well, he was being a particular dick this day, and said, well, alright, if you can't keep up with me, then I'm gonna run this way.
So he runs like a dumbass.
Yeah.
It's great. And
this is the point where the last point of return, because he calls his therapist saying, that if she can get him in sooner.
Yeah.
Because he knows he's at his limit.
He's pretty, like, this is him being like, alright, this is the end. This is the only thing I know what to do.
Yep.
Which is sad, because, like, the only thing he knew what to do was to call his non-emergency psychiatrist.
Yep. And she's even working around. She's trying to get him in Monday morning.
Yeah.
But also, he's still
lost.
Yeah.
He's not, like, having a moment of clarity sort of thing. It's, like, somewhere in his recess he's hoping. But he's not stopping.
He goes to kill a pigeon.
Yeah, so apparently for, like, 11 years, Cage thought he legit caught a New York City pigeon.
Yeah.
And then the director was like, no, dude, that pigeon was drugged out of its mind.
Yeah, so you could catch it. You can't catch a pigeon, man.
Which is hilarious.
Or maybe he thought, like, they had trained it to, like...
Yeah, he thought it was, like he legit caught a pigeon.
Yeah.
Not, like, a drugged off its ass pigeon.
Humanely drugged, as they put it.
It's a pigeon.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying be mean to the pigeons, but, like, it's a pigeon.
Yeah, which apparently, like, people got really pissed off at this scene.
Yeah, I mean...
Like, this over the cockroach, because, like, people call pigeons rats with wings, but apparently they're supposed to not be too bad.
I mean, there is, I think, a difference between the aggressive street feeder pigeons and, like, because I had a friend in college who her family had kept pigeons as, like,
yeah,
and so, like, she loved the pigeons. She had a pet pigeon that, like, lived with her, and, like, they can be really sweet, like, accompany birds.
Yeah,
but just like a pet rat is not the same thing as the New York City pizza rat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, please don't abuse pigeons.
No. They are doves, too. They're a rock dove.
They are.
Yeah.
Fun
fact.
We've also already lost an entire race of pigeons because of human stupidity, so, like, let's not lose more.
We've lost a lot of stuff because of human stupidity.
Yeah. Poor pigeons.
Yeah. So, kills a pigeon. There's feathers everywhere, and he proceeds to make his pathetic little coffin.
It's so sad. It's the saddest coffin I've ever seen.
He just flips his stupid couch over.
It's so dumb.
It's what an elementary school kid would do.
Yeah, no, like
it's his vampire pillow fort, but
this is a vampire pillow fort,
couch.
And like it's clearly done without any like he clearly doesn't have the rational thought to like put together a coffin of any kind. Because, like, there's other stuff in his apartment that he could have used to make, like, a nice pillow fort coffin.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the logic ability to do that anymore. The best he can do is put couch upside down, coffin. Good enough.
Yeah, which also is a way to pass time, because he's been up all night. He sleeps through the day, and we get another ominous New York skyline.
Yeah.
And immediately, like, deep setting sun and just I want to believe it's the morning sun, but it's probably Evening Sun, just because
Yeah,
it popped in my head. Red sky by morning, sailors take warning.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, why not? Reading too far into
this movie?
Yeah. And so Cage has completely lost it. He forces his way into a club with his shitty teeth in his mouth by gut punching the
Poor bodyguard.
bouncer. Where he proceeds to up his game further.
Yeah, because who can resist him now?
He finds his first human victim.
Unfortunately. And
kills her in a club, in a open room that she's the only one in.
Yeah, I don't really understand this club room, but sure.
It's whatever.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, they mentioned who she was. She's like, it was like her first role, and it's some famous director's daughter or something.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I'm not sure.
I didn't pay too much attention to that part of the commentary. But he's clearly taking everything too far now.
Yeah, like we reached the point of no return a long time ago, but even this action, this action even breaks him. Like he even knows that he's gone too far. Yeah.
And so this is the part where Rachel becomes the most questionable in this whole
Rachel
story, because she shows up.
Yep. She's still hanging around.
And she's pretending like she knows, or she's addressing him like she knows him.
Yeah.
Asking, can you really do this every night?
Yeah.
And he's like, I can.
Like he's trying to prove to her that he can be with her. He can be the vampire to go with her.
Yeah. And he clings to her, and she proceeds to spit on him.
Yeah.
Which Cage didn't know she was going to do that. So
someone caged the cage.
Yes. And so she goes back into the club with a mysterious dude in the background. Maybe another vampire.
More vampires. Is the city overrun with vampires?
I mean, probably,
but not.
I mean, there is the New York Vampire Society, or whatever the hell they call themselves.
Sure, but in this movie, probably not.
No. And so he goes into the club and tries confronting her, telling everyone she's a vampire.
And, like a club dude, they don't care.
But she's also at this point, she's acting like she doesn't know him.
Yeah.
And then as he's being escorted out, she has a very sinister look on her face.
Yes.
And I don't know, because I don't know what parts are from Cage's point of view at this point and which ones are reality.
And I think that's part of the, fun of this movie,
mm-hmm.
is that, there's a couple ways you could interpret that scene. There's a couple ways you could interpret Rachel, especially the second half Rachel. And there's not really a wrong answer. And it doesn't really matter what answer you come up with, because the outcome will be the same no matter what.
True. Yeah. I don't know. It's just she is such a weird element in this movie.
She is. But I kind of like her because, A, she keeps the vampire part of the movie going.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it would be more just Peter's obsession, Peter's psychotic obsession with vampires, but the audience wouldn't be quite as invested in the vampire part.
Yeah, I see that.
Because, you know he's obsessed with vampires, but, without Rachel, you wouldn't really see how far his obsession goes.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she kind of also is, a part of him that he's projecting onto some people, maybe, but also, there's that element of mystery that kind of keeps the whole, you're confused and he's confused, which kind of helps the spiraling, I think. Otherwise, I think the audience wouldn't quite be in the spiral with him.
Yeah.
It'd be a little bit more like watching the disaster from the outside.
Yeah, that's a good analysis.
Yeah.
And so, at this point, he has lost it even further.
He's gonna hit rock bottom. He's going for it.
This is the part where he starts making up excuses for his actions.
Yeah.
Where he's
trying to cling back to how he'd always lived his life.
Yeah, he is completely disheveled.
Yep.
Walking around with
blood on him.
Just running off into the daylight.
Yep.
which he does not know is vampire lore then.
No, he's clearly, like, it's very clear in certain scenes that the vampire part of him is super fake.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, at the same time, if it's real in your head, how real is it in real life, sort of question. And I think that's where Cage, acting-wise, was trying to go with a lot of his stuff and his scenes. 'Cause, like, you know that the actor Cage knows the vampire rules, and if he had wanted to, he could have broken this whole movie down and been like, no, this is how we need to go.
Yeah.
Because we've seen him perform that way before. We know that he's willing to do the deep dive on that stuff.
Yeah.
But he purposefully chose to spend more time creating this psychotic character as opposed to, like, enforcing the vampire rules.
Yeah, exactly. So, and also he's not a real vampire.
And he's not a real vampire.
So, doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And so at this point, Alva tells her brother that, what Peter has done to her, that she's been raped.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, Peter is completely inside his head with his mind psychiatrist.
Yeah, he thinks he's seeing someone.
Yeah. And also at this point, like, the city has encompassed him. He's walking through alleyways. It's not just a background through a window. He's
full on, like, street style crawling his way around.
Yeah. And he's just saying, hey, this is where he's making excuses of, like, why he's justified in what he did.
Yeah.
And at this point, his head doctor introduces him to his dream girl.
Yes.
Who just happens to be the next patient. And
Which, this is how you know it's in his head, because this is not how patient confidentiality works.
Because, she's like, they both love Japanese food because it's so refreshing.
Never called Japanese food refreshing in my life, but okay.
It's good, but...
Oh, it's delicious. It's one of my favorite cuisines, but I don't know if 80s style New York City Japanese food is refreshing. Because you know it's not like some of the traditional snacks that are refreshing, or like the desserts.
Yeah.
Or, some of the fresh dishes or pickle dishes. It's probably like Japanese sushi.
Yeah. Yeah, which is probably what most people are thinking of.
Oh yeah, like this is 80s American interpretation of Japanese food.
Yeah. And as he's leaving the head meeting, he admits to his psychiatrist that, oh yeah, I also killed a couple people, which means he probably went out and killed someone else that we didn't see.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, that's fine. Don't worry about it. And he's like, okay, well, I also did rape, my coworker. And she's like, don't worry about it. This part, apparently people were offended by him admitting to the rape and it being dismissed like that.
But I can see where the anger comes from, but I think you're supposed to feel that anger. Yeah. Because you know morally how wrong what he's done is. But, I think the scene is trying to portray, like, he doesn't.
Exactly.
He doesn't accept that what he's done is wrong. Exactly. Because he's a vampire, it's fine.
Yeah, it's something not to worry about.
Yeah.
And Cage also mentioned in the commentary that if the rape wasn't mentioned at this point, then they kind of would have just been glamorizing it, because there wasn't...
Yeah, then it wouldn't have had a purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Which, yeah, like, I agree. Like, it's one of those weird lines that, like, there's never going to be the perfect way to depict a crazy person's interpretation of their crimes and their justification to themselves of that.
No.
Which is... I don't hate how this movie does it, because it does make you mad. Yeah. And I like that it bothers to make the audience feel that anger. Mm-hmm. Because you're not supposed to, at this point, identify with Peter. No. You're supposed to hate him.
Yeah, because he's walking around the street with a plank of pallet board that he's ripped off. And he's talking to street lamps.
Yeah, he's like, we've completely lost him. Yeah. Peter is gone. Peter is no more. It is now Vampire Peter.
He has the same first name as Peter Parker.
Yes, he does.
The real Batman story.
Batman's Spider-Man.
I know who Peter Parker is, but he got bit by a bat, not a spider.
Oh, he did get bit by a bat.
Yeah.
Yeah, well...
I don't know where I was
Spider
going
Batman.
with. Yeah, whatever. I don't know where I was going with that.
New bad guy. Fights them both at once.
But so at this point, it seems like Peter is trying to move on with his life. Not that he should. Well, I mean, but
well, he should be doing a lot of things, but moving on in the way he is not one of them.
yeah. But he's having a good old time with new girlfriend in his head.
Yeah, new made up girlfriend is great.
All while Alva is waiting for her brother to point out where Peter's at.
Yeah, she's gonna point him out to her brother.
/ how does she know where he lives?
Well, I mean, she's his secretary. She probably had to drop shit off at his house, like his dry cleaning.
Yeah, I can see him doing that to them.
Yeah, I mean, he sounds like a terrible boss who would want things catered to him.
Yeah.
So, like, she's probably had to write his address down on stuff. She's probably had to deliver stuff or order things to him.
Yeah.
So she probably does know. Or she went back to the office and Rolodexed him.
True. But now we're back into the apartment with Peter walking in, and his relationship with new dream girl is already breaking down because he's yelling at her because she keeps asking him why he killed people.
Not how, but why.
Why. And so he proceeds to get back in his coffin as
His coffin.
As the brother sneaks in, finds him under the coffin with the broken plank, doesn't even put up a fight.
Nope, just kills him.
Stabs right through him, and just kind of somewhat. It almost feels like it was an underacted death.
Yeah.
/ it wasn't like.
Yeah, no. All the rest of this movie's been so over the top with everything that you kind of expect him to do the whole like I'm dying.
Yeah.
Whoa. But he just kind of dies.
His hand lifts up and it falls down, which. That was another thing they mentioned too, is I guess Cage and Bierman at this time were tired of quiet or still deaths.
Sure. Okay. I see what they mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I've always kind of thought that most death in, at least not action movies, and their action movies have their own problem with death scenes in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, death is always portrayed in like only really two ways, at least at this point in film history. We don't have a whole lot of like realistic trauma deaths. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of like I die old age and sleep / I die with the overacting. There's not a whole lot of like ow, dead.
Yeah. I can't remember. There was one movie, I can't remember its exact name, but like the strangulation scene in it was really well done.
Yeah.
Like I don't think it was the Hunger Games, but that being said, my dad said the bruising around the neck was really good. Side note, my dad used to work for an organ harvesting company in an operating room, so he's seen a lot of medical stuff. So
our go-to source.
Yeah, him and my brothers are, and actually I know a lot of people in the medical world that I
can ask weird questions.
Yes,
with.
exactly.
Yes. What else are they for?
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think it's more of a recent mindset in movies to show like a more accurate portrayal of death.
Yeah.
Especially like a less wholesome death.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. And so yeah, I appreciate that they didn't go with the overacting part because the death now feels a little bit more grounded and real.
Yeah.
Even though like this death is still an over the top. Like, he was staked through the heart, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, and I think it's just upping the factor, or the shock factor, because they're wanting to...
Yeah, this is like a permanent thing.
Yeah.
To a character who, in his head, has no permanent problems.
Yeah, so... But as Peter dies, an image of Rachel haunts the screen, and we cut to the oppressing skyline of New York City, kind of like an ominous... sign that the city swallowed another lost soul.
Yeah, like the city continues on.
Yeah, it's kind of a just quick end.
It is kind of a quick end, but I appreciate the quick end on this one just because like we've already seen him spiral so far that you're kind of left with only really two options. He continues to live in that lowest bottom pit, or he's going to be dead.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that we didn't draw out him, like, living on the streets some way, because it really wouldn't have added to the story in any way.
No, it was actually a pretty, like, even though we jumped around back and forth between a lot of the scenes.
Sure.
It is a pretty concise movie.
Yeah, no, it does have a very nice linear progression of everything. It's just on top of this story that, in theory, on paper, without the Cage acting, is this sad, depressing spiral of a man going through a terrible problem and then creating problems for everyone around him. There's the Cage factor on top of it, which for some people was very distracting. There was a lot of critics who hated this movie when it came out because they felt it was insensitive. They didn't think that Cage's performance was appropriate. But then there were other people who now, especially with the cult status of this movie, really feel that like Cage's performance is entertaining.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, there are people who feel like Cage's performance was, while maybe not the most perfect performance for the script part of the story, feel like it really did add something to this movie.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And actually just kind of thinking of it, Cage stated that this, like I said previously, that this was one of his favorite performances he's ever done.
Yeah.
And that he's always thought that this movie was ahead of its time. Look at last year with The Joker.
Oh, yeah. This has very similar, like, themes of problem and, you know, descent into madness that the Joker has, but where the Joker took it and decided to, backstory it, which, backstory, but at the same time, the Joker took it and attempted to go in a very adult and an overview of the character, as opposed to trying to have the audience confused along with you as you watch. Like,
yeah,
you're much more in control as the audience with the Joker film, I think. Whereas this film, you end the film with questions that you're not going to get answered. And some of them, like, it doesn't matter to the film. Yeah. But it kind of would help explain things to you.
Well, in portrayal of, like, mental illness, like... Yeah,
this is by no means a good portrayal of mental illness, but at the same time, it's at least attempting to be an honest portrayal.
Yeah, it's all about the mania, where, for me, Joker... Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal was fantastic. Oh, yeah. He did a great job.
It was.
But Joker's covering of the subject matter was very Cabinet of Dr. Caligari-esque. It was fine, yeah, sure. But what I like about Vampire's Kiss is that it tried to do something original. And it did. It didn't try. It did something original.
Yeah, very much so. And while, granted, this isn't like a great portrayal of mental health in general, I appreciate that their original take on it didn't shy away from it as an all-consuming and devastating problem that isn't happening to someone. Like, this person it is a two-way street. Like, it's happening to them, but they are also, like, inflicting it upon others. It's not just happening in their little world and woe is them. Yeah. No. Like, this is something that, like, ends lots of people's lives, ruins other people's lives, and eventually ends up with him being completely destroyed by it. Yeah. And I appreciate that take on it, because while that's not the case for everyone, I do think that Hollywood in general has a really hard time portraying problems like this in a way that doesn't come off as like a... preachy. Yeah, preachy, or even like an insensitive way. Yeah. Which some could say, like, this movie is insensitive in that manner, but at least they attack the issue head on. Yeah. And it's...
they don't pussyfoot around.
Yeah, they don't pussyfoot around it. Or the other thing that I think a lot of people... I shouldn't say a lot of people, but Hollywood in general has a tendency to do is to turn these sort of problems into, like, a rose-tinted glasses, where we see a lot of movies where the main character has schizophrenia, like we see Peter with. Yeah. But instead of it being life-changing in such a negative way, it might be for a little bit, but then they come back around and now they save... like, it's not a superpower. It's a terrible problem.
What it makes me think of is... it's the personification of all those people on Facebook who post the memes of, like, don't mess with me, I've had my heart broken before. Oh, you won't like me when I'm angry because I'm real crazy. And it's like, no, you don't want to be crazy.
No, like, it's not a fun experience. No. And Yeah, so while there is definitely things that I think the movie, if it was made now, A, wouldn't do.
No.
And B, would probably take a different way, or maybe give the character different problems to get to the same end result.
Yeah.
I at least appreciate that, like, the consequences were real for this movie.
Yeah.
As opposed to making this terrible, like, descent into vampiristic madness a somehow superpower that he has to carry the heavy burden alone.
Yeah.
It's not a heavy burden he has to carry alone. It's something that he has that ruins his life and others around him.
Yeah, another movie that it kind of makes me think of is with Ryan Reynolds, The Voices.
Oh, okay.
Where he's talking to his cats and dogs, and then, like, when he goes off his medication, and it's like, oh, this has real his actions have consequences. Again, like, as Marcus Parks has said, mental health isn't your fault, but it is your responsibility.
Yeah, and
with great power comes great responsibility.
But that's the stance that I think a lot of Hollywood had for mental illness for decades, and still does to some extent. Like,
yeah.
And so while I think Vampire's Kiss couldn't be made now.
No.
And I think it's not a movie for everyone because of that. I do think that it's refreshing to see a movie that was actively dealing with problems of its time. And we've talked about that before. That's one of the reasons why some superhero movies work.
Yeah.
And this movie clearly had that as an underlying written factor.
Well, like, even another superhero movie with Nicolas Cage, because I have found a superhero movie I like, Enter the Spider-Verse.
Oh, sure.
Like, it's definitely an updated modern version of the Spider-Man origin story, but it rearranges the parts and makes it more up to date in
yeah. There's always room for improvement, and there's argue for whether Vampire Kiss should be updated, but at the same time, this is a product of the 80s, and it does so without any shame or questioning what it is.
Yeah,
and at the same time, you can see every layer, every person has their own part of the story that they put onto it. So, like, the writer's struggle with depression and his girlfriend are very clearly, like, throughout this movie.
Yeah.
Nic Cage's desire to attempt to act and in the most crazy and reactionary way possible are also very clear in this movie. The directors want to make something new and exciting is also clearly on this movie. Like, every person's involvement is so clear individually that I think that's why this movie made it to be cult classic.
Yeah, well, and just talking about, like, the reactionary and everyone's involvement in it, and the heart that was put into it, Mandy. We definitely have that, because there are parts where he's a little bit over the top in Mandy, but it's a more refined.
It is. And I think it's interesting to see, like, how he's taken... Because you can see the same acting style in Mandy as you can in this movie, I think. But, like you said, it's become refined.
Yeah.
To a point where, like, it no longer feels like a joke.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, where, like, him screaming in the bathroom in Mandy is real, whereas, like, if he was screaming like that in
this movie, it would have just felt like a joke.
Like, even him saying, like, Vampire's Kiss is one of those few movies where a line that is normally comedic is kind of scary when he says boo-hoo. Yeah. Basically, he just wanted to find something to say boo-hoo. Like,
he wanted to be able to say boo-hoo in a convincing way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you don't develop the refinement that we saw in Mandy and the descent into madness that we saw in Mandy without having some lines that don't... Like, it worked for Vampire's Kiss because the whole movie was an experiment. Yeah. But you can see where he managed to take that descent into madness and refine it down to where the audience can feel the anger and passion in Mandy. Yeah. Whereas this one, the audience has their own anger, which I see how he's managed to adapt it, and I appreciate that. Yeah. One other thing for me on this movie that I think they did a great job was kind of balancing your hatred towards him and also, like, your sympathy towards him. Yeah, very much so. It did it in a way that reminded me of, like, Lolita, where
Hubert is the pedophile is.
Oh, yeah, the movie, yeah.
Yeah, you were thinking like gothic Lolita fashion.
Sorry, I was thinking frilly dresses.
Yeah, no, Humbert in Lolita, where like you hate him because he's a pedophile, but you're sympathetic for him because he is kind of...
He's still human.
Yeah, human, and he's aware of his flaws.
Yeah, and I will say that I do appreciate that while Vampire's Kiss definitely at the end, and it leaves the audience with this hatred for Peter. But at the beginning of the movie, you don't like Peter, but at the same time, you connect with the guy. Like, he's trying to live the American dream, he's got issues, but he's trying to work through them, kind of, not really.
He's the OG American Psycho.
Yeah. And so, like, I appreciate that there is a bit of a development there, whereas we could have easily just hated Peter from the beginning.
Yeah.
And not in the, like, oh, I don't like Peter, because I don't like Peter at the beginning of this movie.
No.
But, like, he's not so bad that I would, like, leave the room he's standing in. Whereas at the end of the movie, you're like, I would actively run from Peter.
Yeah.
Cannot stand Peter. Peter is terrible.
Yeah, he's drunk. Not drunk. Well, drunk on blood.
Yeah.
Just
drunk on vampire power.
Yeah, walking around the street, like you said, the boom in the 80s of the mental asylum people being released, and that actually still rings true because there's legends of like Cropsey and the people who like colonies of the crazy people who went to live in abandoned subway stations.
Yeah, and you can see the 80s mindset really heavily in this movie, and I think that there is something in recognizing that and rewatching movies like that and understanding that that's how people felt at the time, because no one was ready to understand the homelessness in the 80s. No one was ready to understand mental illness in the 80s. And
especially male mental illness, because even now that's starting to become something that's more talked about. Yeah,
and it also wasn't something that, like, it was something to be addressed when it became so bad, like in Vampire's Kiss, that no one, like, that it's so clear to everyone else. Like, you're crawling around on the streets yelling at lampposts, level crazy. Whereas, honestly, like, the help he would receive now, if he had gone to a psychiatrist, probably would have been very different than the help he received even in the 80s, even though he did go see a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
And so, it's, I think, a weird movie to watch, because there is that level of heaviness for viewers now to watch, where we see where the movie has flaws.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is no getting around the memeability. And the one-liners in this movie are hilarious. Nic Cage's performance is absolutely hilarious in this movie.
Yeah.
In that dark humor sort of way.
Exactly.
So
and
it's a balancing act with this.
Yeah, that's the thing too, especially like looking at it now where true crime has become pop culture thing. Yeah. Like, I was looking at this and I'm seeing all this stuff and I'm like, this is the start of a serial killer. Like, not just he's gonna kill this one time,
but like he's gonna have a problem.
Yeah, because we already see him breaking down.
Yeah,
he's gone into berserker mode.
Yeah, and I also think that, you know, there was definitely a true crime phase in the 80s, but it was more like couch detective sort of thing. There wasn't the importance and weight that the victims have that I think a lot of true crime people now feel. Yeah. Because we've come to realize that while not everyone who is in those stories is, you know, someone to be grieved over, we've gotten to a point in our knowledge of people like Peter and Vampire's Kiss where it's more than just an evil person. Yeah. He had a life before this. He could have been someone better. But due to a lot of things, he didn't. Yeah. And so I think there is that layer that makes this movie kind of an odd watch nowadays.
Yeah. So, on that note then, would you recommend watching this movie?
I would recommend this movie to other friends of dark humor. Yes. This movie, there are so many good one-liners. The Nic Cage acting in this is every Nic Cage acting you've ever wanted. This is him at his peak over-the-top cageness. Yes. Which you don't get to this extent and this fullness.
Yeah, nowadays.
Yeah, like he's refined so much that like this is classical Cage. Yeah. And so because of that, yes, if you like dark humor, this is a good movie to watch. However, with that said, like we said, this movie does take a realistic dark turn.
Yeah.
So I don't think this movie's for everyone.
I can see that, because comedy is hard.
Yeah, and dark comedy's hard.
Yeah, especially, like, for me, like, Hobo with a Shotgun.
Yeah. Like, we have a dark sense of humor.
Yeah.
But there are definitely people who this would not be funny to.
Yes, no, exactly. I mean, I would be selective on who I share it with, but I do believe people should go and revisit this movie.
Yeah.
Like,
there's points in this movie that are good.
Yeah, and especially, like, if you're curious about Cage, this is where it started.
This is where it started. And this is very much an 80s movie. This is dark horror humor 80s movie.
Yeah.
So if you like that genre, this is it.
No, exactly.
This is all of it wrapped up into one.
Exactly. And I think we can both say on the Cage meter...
Oh, this is a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, it's...
This is an 11 out of 10.
True Cage.
This is as Cage as you can possibly get.
Yes.
It's full Cage all the time.
Yeah. So, yeah. I don't know. I
like this movie, though. I do like this movie.
I do, too.
For all the ranting we've done for it, I like this movie. I will watch it again.
Exactly. I will rewatch it. You'll rewatch it because your husband's going to rewatch it.
Yeah, he managed to miss this one. And when you yelled the alphabet at him, he was very confused. I did. Oh. And then I proceeded to yell the alphabet at him, and he was still confused.
Yes. Well, on side little trivia,
mm-hmm.
Cage bought his 1967 Stingray Corvette with this paycheck.
Which is the most Cage car you could have told me.
Yeah.
And he still has it as far as I know.
As far as I'm aware as well, so. But, yeah.
Good for him.
Yep. Side little housekeeping note for next month for all the listeners. We won't have a short or spotlight.
It's so busy, guys.
Yeah,
'tis the season to be busy.
Yes. Yeah, I'm having to watch Christmas movies early.
Same.
So.
Same.
Anywho, this has been The Good, the Bad, and the Weird.
Thanks for listening.
Peace.